I am originally from Ghana, but I live in Edmonton, where I work for the government of Alberta. So I lead adaptation, policy, and planning processes in the province of Alberta. What I'm going to talk to you about is basically from a policy perspective, a government policy perspective, on what we have been doing as far as adaptation management is concerned. What we are doing and then what we intend to do, and then link into the theme of the conference, which is food security in Aboriginal communities. My title is Climate Change, Climate Governance in Marginalized Communities, an Alberta approach. And I use marginalized community very guardedly, so love you should take difference. Before I go on, I just want to say a little bit about myself. As I said, I am African, even though they call me Bob. If you were on the bus on the first day coming from the airport, when we got to the customs point, as at the customs or immigration point, the immigration officer came on the bus and asked who we are. He said, "Are you all natives?" There was some response. I didn't respond. And then he picked up passports. And I was sitting at the back, and I heard him say, he went through the passports and pictures, and I heard him say, "Bob is definitely," before he even saw me, he said, "Bob is definitely not native," which I understood. But then I was saying to myself, well, I'm not native in your expectation of what a native is, but I also have an Aboriginal heritage. I'm from Africa. We share the same histories, we share the same cultures. Our destinies and fates and humanities were disrupted by colonization. So in a way, I am native. So maybe next time when we get to the customs, I'll have to take him through that history. So thank you very much. As I said, it's an opportunity for me to first learn, and then also to share with you from a policy perspective what the government of Alberta has been doing. Before I also go on to my actual presentation, I've made some notes from yesterday, and I just want to share a few things that I've noted. One of the things that struck me yesterday was when Glenn talked about he's enjoying this climate change thing, and we all laughed. But there is some aspect of climate change that we can enjoy. They call it opportunities that climate change brings to us. We can only enjoy that when we are conscious of that and put in place the necessary, we need to be proactive to put in place the necessary structures and arrangements to utilize some of these opportunities so that we can join Glenn in enjoying climate change. So climate change is not all doom and gloom. The other thing is, I also have noted that various people have been talking about having difficulty in communicating climate change to different people, more so to politicians, who sometimes feel, my own experience in government, they feel very uncomfortable about the phrase climate change and even adaptation, the word. My advice is, when you face such challenges everywhere, try using extreme events and then link it to your locality. They pay attention. So that's one advice from them. And I would also, Shaila, talking today, we appreciate you inviting us to join your choir. And I'm glad you're going to Nigeria, which is next door to my native. I like your concept of remembering. And I believe you are not only telling us to recollect where we come from, but also remember means to get reconnected. To reconnect, to remember, become a member to the systems of nature, and also to understand the nature of these systems and our individual and communal roles in the systems of nature. So thanks for bringing that up. That's very good. And now, my presentation. So, climate governance in marginalized communities. I chose that. It's a topic that I've used before. Actually, originally, the title was Pro-Poor Adaptation. But I decided to leave that part of it out, not to create any confusion as to what poor means or what poor doesn't mean. So I say climate governance in marginalized communities. And in fact, looking at the context of our conversation, we are talking about communities or a group of people that have been historically marginalized in mainstream politics or even society. My work in Alberta never mentioned Aboriginal adaptation needs. However, looking at my own background, where I come from, and the fact that we share similarities in cultures and the way we do things, I have been an advocate of paying a special, giving Aboriginal adaptation needs a special attention in our planet adaptation policy planning and the strategy processes. So that is why I arrived at that. So I will start off telling you a little bit about the history of Alberta's approach in terms of the provincial process as to how we are managing climate change adaptation in the province. So the government of Alberta recognizes mitigation adaptation as being one of the whole, part of the whole, of the whole climate change discourse. So we have given the two issues focused policy attention by creating the Climate Change Secretariat where I work. We do have mitigation and adaptation in the Secretariat, and I lead the adaptation part of it. We do have a 2008 climate change strategy, which also affirmed the fact that adaptation is very important and we need to put together a comprehensive provincial adaptation strategy. Next slide. So basically our policy process has been evolving around research, learning, knowledge development, institutional capacity building, and then of course action. We acknowledge that climate change itself is an evolving phenomenon which requires proactive learning and action. So learning, research, and capacity development has been the focus of our work. We established working relationship, research relationship with key universities. PARC in the University of Regina. PARC is a Prairie Adaptation Regional Collaborative. And then we also have working relationships with the University of Alberta. We established Alberta's Climate Change Adaptation Team, which is called ACAT. It's a cross-government representational body which comes together, which I chair from our Climate Change Secretariat. And we put together key people from key sectors so that we make sure that no sector, no theme is left out in our works. This didn't have any Aboriginal representation on it until I came on the scene. So we used the vulnerability and risk approach, which a lot of people use in adaptation planning processes. What we did was we developed our climate scenarios, which of course told us that we should expect more extreme weather events, changing temperatures and precipitation patterns. We will continue to experience that. This summer we had all sorts of issues, weather issues. We conducted a province-wide vulnerability assessment in three main areas: economics, biophysical, and social. And then we continued that with a risk assessment, which is a government-wide risk assessment, which we call a sector-based risk assessment. It's a three-phase process, looking not just at climate risk. You cannot talk about climate risk without looking at opportunities. So that's why Glenn's comment actually struck me. The second phase is we have developed a ministry and sector-specific adaptation strategies for all government ministries. And we are currently in the phase where we are synthesizing the different reports into a draft government strategy, which would eventually go out for public consultation to become a provincial strategy. Our vulnerability assessments actually mention special vulnerable groups and one of those groups was Aboriginal groups. It indicated Aboriginal groups, both in rural and urban communities, have higher levels of exposure and sensitivity to climate change impacts, obviously due to the fact that they do have low socioeconomic status, poor health, inadequate information and education, subsistence resource-based livelihoods, and historical, political, cultural marginalization. Put all these together, and what they do is they reduce adaptive capacities. So once we got that knowledge from our vulnerability assessment, which was more qualitative assessment, literature review, and a few case studies here and there, we decided to use more rigor in the assessment of actual risk. So the risk assessment clarified and quantified some of what we learned from our vulnerability assessment. And key risk as they relate, Alberta risk as they relate to Aboriginal groups are episodes of water pollution, obviously because of what is happening in Alberta's northern region, the oil situation, regional droughts, animal plants, pest infestation, water supply demand, hydroclimate variability causing that, diminishing and changing biodiversity, shifting character of species and migration, uncoupling of ecosystems, and loss of cultural connection to place, which a lot of us have been talking about that in different ways since yesterday. Next slide. As I said, those risks are key Alberta risks, but they are the ones that have special relationship with Aboriginal communities. So these are risks with significant implications for the health of Aboriginal lands. And of course, the health of the land also impacts the overall health and welfare of the people, especially those who live on reserves and live their lives off and above the land. When people live in and off land, experience changes and impact. When people live in and off the land, experiences of changes and impacts are immediate and disruptive. It impedes sustainability. And I use sustainability here very broadly. It disrupts life, it disrupts cultures, it disrupts histories. So I'm not using sustainability just in environmental science, but broadly. It has significant implications for a wide range of issues, and of course within the context of the conversations here. Food security, I prefer to call it food insecurity. Next slide. Which the Food and Agriculture Organization defines that it exists when all people at all times have physical or economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. What this means is food security goes beyond physical presence or physical availability of food. Whenever we start talking conversations about food security, there's always been the tendency, and we've seen that here at different times, for people to look at it so narrowly as just the physical availability of food. But there are 4 dimensions of food security. One is availability, production, distribution and exchange, accessibility, affordability, that is, if food is accessible, people should be able to afford it. We should be able to allocate it to different people. And there should be a preference. You should go out there and be able to make your usual choices. Utilization. What's the point in food being available, accessible, and people can utilize it? Maximize its nutritional benefit, and also ensuring that whatever they take in is safe for the health and for the body. And food systems availability, that is supply chain. Here we should be thinking about access roads, what's happening in the north. Access, income levels, when people can afford food, food could be available, could be fiscally available, when people can afford it, we are still experiencing. When the markets can't even supply them, we still have issues of food insecurity. Next slide. So there is an aspect of socioeconomics of food security or insecurity. Food systems become vulnerable when one or more of the dimensions, as I outlined, become uncertain or insecure. Food security is dependent on socioeconomic conditions rather than just agroclimatic conditions. So we need to broaden the conversation, start looking beyond just the climate impact on either food security or food insecurity. It also depends on access more than production, physical availability. Solutions require integrated approaches, multi-sector, multi-theme, economic conditions, markets, income, people's health. So these are some of the things that we have looked at in the works that we do in Alberta as we develop our provincial adaptation strategy. And then we have started putting in place governance mechanisms. And what I mean by governance mechanisms, how do we manage this? How do we go beyond government to involve people, groups like yourself, build your capacities, and to make sure that we put the necessary institutional structures and arrangement in place to help the management of either food security or any aspect of climate change impact. Within the context of our strategy development, vulnerability and risk assessment, which we have completed, we have identified and prioritized our climate change risks. Food security is one of them in Aboriginal communities. We have established, or in the process of establishing, the uniqueness of Aboriginal adaptation needs, both in urban and rural areas. And we have also started engaging key leaders and decision makers in government. What we've done is we are working with the department, the Ministry of Aboriginal Affairs, to actually provide their inputs on what we've come out with, and then working on other key sectors to provide inputs. We are sharing findings and asking for inputs all through government. And then, in the end, what we hope to do is to go public, consult different stakeholders, go into the field where we deal with, through people and organizations like yourselves, build the capacities, and then we deal with issues on the ground in Aboriginal communities. Next slide. So, what we've done as far as the governance system is concerned, or what we intend to do going forward, is to share the multi-level governance mechanism, and that is all of us, all stakeholders on board. Develop the necessary institutional structure. So if we came to you, or if an organization like you came to us with a proposal that you needed some training to build your capacity, we come in to help where we can. Provide information, make all the research studies that we have conducted, make it available, create awareness, and educate at different levels. We use place-based and context-specific approaches to disseminate information and to deal with issues as they relate to specific places. I mean, places have different challenges. And then all these will strengthen resilience and then also enhance adaptive capacity in different communities, including Aboriginal communities. So basically, our philosophy in dealing with this, managing adaptation, is a development as freedom philosophy. And what do I mean by development as freedom? Development as freedom is, first we have to enhance people's capabilities. Climate change, of course, is diminishing capabilities, not capacity, capabilities. And capabilities here, what I mean by capabilities is, all the things that people need to be functional are being erased by either climate change impacts or by something else. So what it is we have to make sure that we put those things in place, build the necessary institutional structures to make people free to do the things that they will normally do. So that is the philosophy of development as freedom. That is what we are doing in Alberta, and I'll be happy to take questions if there are any. Thank you very much.
I had a question. The integrated solutions, we're all using that terminology now, but when you really think about it, it can be massively complicated. And yet, the clock is running in some ways, and so can you give me an example of an integrated solution in motion?
Right. Well, integrated solution from a government, and from, specifically from a government of Alberta perspective, is to move climate change beyond the Ministry of Environment and to involve all other government ministries and stakeholders. So what we are doing is, much as we manage the climate change file as and that's the popular notion that climate change is an environmental problem. So from an integrated solution perspective, what we are saying is, of course, it's an environment problem, but the solution should come from all other sectors. So within government, we are involving all government ministries. The ACAD team that I mentioned, which is Alberta Climate Change Adaptation Team, is a cross-government and stakeholder representational group where we discuss climate change. So even when we are talking about issues of food security, we look at the health aspect of it, we look at the transportation aspect of it, we look at the education aspect of it, and we bring people from all these ministries around the table to discuss the best solution to a problem such as food security. So that is how I would describe that from a government perspective.
So when those decisions are made, that will form the basis of an action?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And what government, we work with policies. So what we do, we use these approaches to design our policies, and then we use the same basis for action.